We all like a story of someone who perseveres in hardship when the mediocre path is much more enticing and much easier. Today we are joined by Luke Sweet to discuss his journey through the ups and downs of life, bodybuilding, his plans for raising strong sons, why anime might not be all bad, I'll leave that for you to decide, and much more. I am your host, Gabriel Schickler, and welcome to the Operation Paragon podcast. All right, well, let's get right into it then. So, first thing I want to know is what got you started on your fitness journey and really just, taking your physique and your competence to the next level.
What got me started on my fitness journey?
Yeah.
So, started out as a kid, I was always a fan of, the action movies, the 80s action movies. We got Terminator, we got Rambo, we got Predator, we got, I'm sure you can relate.
Rocky, all the classics,
Yes, Rocky. Yep, all those guys. So I was always interested in like that masculine archetype, I guess you would say. And even like Die Hard. I love Die Hard. Hard. Bruce Willis wasn't super jacked, but just that masculine energy. I was always, attracted to become a man like that. And I was a super skinny kid growing up. I was a little bit nerdy. I was very underweight. Had no idea, I don't come from a family that hits the gym or anything like that. So, that was all, new stuff to me. And then even growing up, it's like it's something that I wanted, but I didn't know how to get per se. Until oddly enough, I was a skinny, nerdy kid, and I loved anime. Well, at first I didn't love anime until I saw Dragon Ball Z. And then watching Dragon Ball Z is what really got me hooked into the, not just that archetype per se, archetype, I think you would say it, but, actually the training and the work that you have to put in to get there, because you watch an action movie and you're basically the person's end result out there, kicking ass, shooting guns, being ripped, all that. But Dragon Ball specifically showed the characters' training and their progression and what it took to get to the next level. And I'd have to say I was probably 14, 15 years old at the time. It's funny, too, because a lot of guys in this space, they really hate on anime. I'll get into that a little more a little bit later.
Because I am one of them, mostly for the meme, but...
for the anime haters?
Yep, mostly for the meme, but please continue.
Nice. Yep, that's funny. But anyway, lost my train of thought there. Oh, anyway, it showed the progression, and I'd be so motivated as a kid, as a skinny, nerdy kid. I had my Pokemon cards. I started collecting Dragon Ball cards, that I would have to go move my body. So I started out, my dad had some dumbbells. He wasn't big into working out, but he had the dumbbells at the house. And I'd be so pumped up. I'd have to do push-ups. I'd have to curl these dumbbells, and I actually loaded up my book bag full of books, and I'd go run up and down hills and stuff. And obviously I still didn't know what I was doing. I was just a kid, trying to go through the motions that we're getting into the show. So then my next move from there is I went to Dick's Sporting Goods, saved up some allowance money, bought my first bench press, a barbell, and some plate weights, and started working out there. I had an old Muscle and Fitness magazine, and so I would just do my best to follow the routines in there. It was it hit a time, the internet was there, but I wasn't as savvy as I am now. So, I was just a kid at the time. Of course, now kids can find just about anything on the internet. But so I'd follow those routines to the best of my ability. And then that turned into, once I was old enough, once I hit 16, I was able to get my first gym membership. And I got it at, a local rec center, which was not a hardcore bodybuilding facility. And but it was still cool to get my feet wet, get into the weights, get into the different cardio machines, and try and come my way that way. Then shortly after that, I'd say I was probably training in the gym for about 6 months. A more hardcore bodybuilding gym opened up on the other side of the town. the people at this little gym that I was going to called it the steroid gym. They said, no, don't leave us. Don't go to the steroid gym. I'm like, yeah, but those dudes in there are all jacked. Like,
Uh-huh.
so, so I ended up going there, and that was actually one of my first jobs too. I talked to the owner, and he let me work behind the desk. His name's Bob. So, um, I was working there, training there, and I ended up linking up with a couple guys that were doing powerlifting. One guy, his name was Jeff Davis,
Mm.
and he was just a badass, and so he essentially taught me how to train. Like, so we were
Mm-hmm.
doing 4 days a week. It was like a power building type split, which at the time I didn't know. Everything I was like, well, I just want to get big like Goku and big like Arnold. Um, and so yeah, I kind of found my way there. Trained there for a long time. I had a lot of different mentors in there.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, young teen or whatever, I didn't even consider them mentors at the time. They were just guys at the gym, and for whatever reason, they decided to help me out and answer my questions. Big Sean, Bob, I told you, the owner. I got into some martial arts there too.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, yep. I was doing a little bit of mixed martial arts with the guy Drew. Drew's a scary guy, man. But through Drew, I met my buddy Charlie, who's a personal trainer. So I've met, so many people from getting into the gym, but it all started back then.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, it's really cool. So I got off on a little bit of tangent, but essentially that's how I got started.
Yeah. No,
Started with
that's really
watching
interesting,
my
man.
my action movies, got into the being a nerd. I got into the anime stuff, and then the anime stuff motivated me so much that I just had to go out and get it. So
Mm-hmm.
I found my way.
Good stuff, man. Yeah. It was really a really interesting experience for me. Just a couple months ago, I got my first actual gym membership. So before that, I would, work out where I am now. I just have a couple dumbbells, some resistance bands, home gym
Mm-hmm.
setup. Basically, I have a bench, but nothing too crazy. And then my other two places where I'd work out would be the gym when I was in college, and then my dad has a decent setup in his basement, so I would work out there when I was still living with my parents. But it
Mm-hmm.
was just eye-opening to go to an actual gym for the first time because I thought I was in pretty decent shape, and then I walk in and I see a guy that's 6 inches taller than me. He's got like 100 pounds of muscle on me, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, dang, okay. It was a really humbling experience, and it really put me in like in my place and put things into perspective with like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in decent shape, but I'm barely scratching the surface with what I could get to. So I think from the just like the mindset perspective, like you said, the steroid gym, to just have
Yeah.
exposure to those things and have your mind open to those possibilities is really healthy. One thing that I think is really interesting about your brand is you're
Mm-hmm.
always posting your outdoor workouts. So there was the tragic demise of the pull-up tree just a couple days
Oh yeah.
ago. You've
Yeah, that
got
was just last night.
Yep. Yeah, you've got your bench out there, and you've got your dumbbells, and I think a bar too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why do you train, outdoors as opposed to just getting a gym membership?
Well, I learned to love it. It started out kind of out of necessity.
Mm,
So I always trained in the gym up until COVID hit. And this will be kind of a funny story too.
okay.
Well, maybe not that funny, but an interesting story, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So COVID hits, and I was formerly married. My wife and I at the time, we were split up. COVID hit, we ended up getting back together
Mm,
during that time. And so together all the gyms were closed, and we ended up building a gym in the garage over at her place. And then just from training at home and making it work, I was actually getting better workouts
mm,
than I was, when I was going to the gym. And plus I didn't have the distractions. It was kind of like I'll go back to Dragon Ball for a minute. In Dragon Ball, they have the hyperbolic time chamber, which is like a place of isolation where they went to train. So,
mm.
complete focus on your task and get it done. So basically, I created that. Long story short, with that, that things did not work out between her and I.
Mm.
So she ended up with the gym that we built. And so I had to go build a second gym, but I stumbled upon it. I was moving from the city that I was in to where I am now. I'm sure you can see I'm out in the country. I live on a chicken farm, actually.
Yeah.
Um, I went by one of my previous neighbors' houses, and their garage was open, and they had a bunch of old weight equipment in there. I'm like, hey, like, what are you guys doing with that? They're like, nothing. It's collecting rust. I said, well, what if I give you $200? Can I take everything? They're like, yeah, go ahead.
That's a pretty sweet deal
And
for a full for a full setup.
yep. And so yeah, so that's where my squat rack comes in. That's where my standard plates, all that stuff.
Dang.
Um, and yeah, so that was where I got a big chunk of my stuff. I brought it out here. Obviously, well, by this point, the gyms are back open, everything, but I got so used to just training at home on my own. I was like, I can't go back because I'm getting better workouts. I'm getting better results. It's still fun to go back once in a while and hit the machines and do different things, but all in all, I get better workouts here, out there on my tree. And I bought a few other additional pieces of equipment after that. Like I got a calf machine from a police officer that I knew, and I bought a few pieces of equipment, off of him. So it turned out began with necessity because the gyms were shut down for COVID, and then it just turned into something that I ended up getting better results with than going to the gym. So, and another thing where I live out here in the country, it'd probably take me a half hour to get to a decent gym. So I go once in a while just to socialize and interact with other people who have the same passion as me. But 98% of my workouts are here at the house. So
what would you
and
say makes those higher quality and just, getting you those better results? Like, what's that deciding factor?
one big thing is doing the best I can with what I have. So you go to the gym and they got the racks, they got the different pieces of cardio equipment, they got specialty barbells, different machines, this and that. Out here, I got some trees, I have dumbbells, I have bands, I have some barbells, everything free weight minus the bands. We won't include the bands as free weights, but the level of mind muscle connection I believe that I've built, and some people think that the whole mind muscle connection stuff is BS. I don't. Arnold didn't. But I kind of had to learn that because at first, with the bare bones stuff, my weights were pretty light, so I had to maximize muscle contraction with lighter weights. And then as I, built up to heavier weights now and ended up buying more equipment and getting new stuff, I retained that mind muscle connection that I had to use when I was doing the bare bones stuff. So that's one thing. Another thing that I think being a little bit limited too is I have my routine and I make my progressions. So a thing that I find personally when I get into the gym, I do have a bit of ADD, is I'll be on a routine and then I'm like, well, wait, that machine looks really cool. And so I'll hit that machine for a few weeks and then I'll be back to what I was doing. So with this, I stay more consistent. If I am going to deviate, I have to be super creative. And like now I'm gonna have to find a different way to do my pull-ups because I destroyed my pull-up limb. But yeah, oh, and another factor as well. So in the wintertime, it sucks, man. It's hard to get motivated to get out there, to bundle up, to it's the snow on the ground, but it does make really cool videos. But it's hard to get motivated in those times. But the satisfaction that I get for getting it done, it's kind of like, just that feeling of overcoming an obstacle is different than going to, your comfy gym where it's temperature controlled,
Not too
there's
hot,
water
not too
fountain.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not chickens everywhere. There's not cats climbing all over your stuff. Um, but in the summertime, so you've been in this space for a while. We all know that grounding is legit, being
Mm-hmm.
outside with your bare feet. We all know the benefits of sun exposure for vitamin D and for, the boost of testosterone. So all of my
Mm-hmm.
workouts are being, when it's nice outside, all of my workouts are being done in that type of environment. So it's just
Mm.
essentially I'm set up to thrive with that, just the way that, I know you're a believer in God. I believe that God, and it's funny, there's a guy, Brock Perk, you might know him. We were having a discussion the other day about biohacking versus, the holistic stuff. And,
Mm.
uh, I believe that, and he agreed. He kind of worded it in a way that like I felt inside, but I didn't know how to put words to it. Is, the whole biohacking thing is using, I guess, man-made things, using science. People do the red light therapy.
Mm-hmm.
They got their special cold plunge tubs, all that stuff, which is cool, which is all beneficial. But, just within nature, God has provided us with basically everything we need to
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote biohack, so I'm in that environment while I'm training, while I'm doing
Mm.
something that I feel that I was created to do. I believe that we as humans are created to be workers. We're
Mm-hmm.
not called to sit on our ass and just let life pass us by. We're called to make things happen. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's instilled in us in our DNA. And so, we don't work the super physical jobs. Not all, a lot of guys
Mm-hmm.
still do, but we're not all working the physical jobs. And, we don't have the best outlet for that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I feel like that's part of my calling is moving my body and doing this bodybuilding stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm just blessed enough to be doing it in that type of environment. So,
Amazing. Yeah, that's a really interesting point because you just reminded me of, one of the biggest shifts in American culture is that pre pretty much World War II, like
hmm
90% of the country's population lived in the countryside. So it's a very agrarian society. You were out working the fields, and obviously as the Industrial Revolution goes, you had more machinery and things like that, but you would still have to, tend to your horses. People forget that we used horses, through World War II and then a little bit after that.
yeah.
You'd have to, keep an eye on your animals. Like you said, you're on a chicken farm, all these different things. And today,
hmm
you know, like you said, we have a lot of jobs that are just not doing anything physical. But even the jobs that are manual are very often inside a factory or a construction site or something like that. So you're still not getting that, like you said, that full exposure to the elements and the entire
hmm
concept of a gym. Like for any other point in history, if you tell somebody, yeah, I take an hour every day and I drive for 15 minutes or half an hour and I
hmm
um, turn on this machine that just spins a little path under me and I walk on that, they would look like, yeah, you're insane. Because you look at even um, warrior cultures, right?
hmm
Like the samurai, the Trojans, people like that. They trained, but it was specifically with the end of making them more competent fighters and things like that. Whereas nowadays, working out is more of a um, well, it's not quite a luxury because it is necessary to live a healthy life, but it is a
hmm
luxury in the sense that you can live your entire life without really observing that. Whereas in the past, if you didn't feel like getting in your steps or whatever when you're plowing your field or you know going out in the woods and chopping up firewood, you would literally
hmm
die. You would starve, you would freeze, you would die of exposure, all these different things. And so yeah, that's a really fascinating point. Now, for anybody that is, maybe they're wanting to add more of a biohacking routine, more grounding, more of that kind of natural approach to training.
hmm
Um, and let's just assume, for the sake of argument, they don't have access to, uh, a wonderful backyard like both of us are blessed with, where they can just kind of gallivant off into the field. Where should
Yeah.
they start to get more of that, natural exposure to how things should be?
I would say the biggest thing would be to, even if you're going to a gym, you live in the city, I would say at least once or twice a week, get out somewhere. Even if you're in the city, there has to be somewhere that you can go and hike,
Hmm.
to get out into the woods.
Park or something.
Even
Yeah.
if you, yeah, even if you got to drive 40 minutes, that'd be huge getting out. And just in general, getting outside and, watching the sunrise, watching the sunset, taking your shoes off, even if all you can get onto is the concrete, just get out there and take off your shirt, feel the sun on your skin.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and just,
Within reason, of course, guys. He's not saying to go stepping on heroin needles. So
no, no, no.
don't give
Yeah,
me
yeah,
angry
yeah.
comments about that.
No, obviously, if you're in a situation like that, yeah, then obviously, yeah, don't be safe, be smart
Yeah.
about it, use your head. Yeah, God gave us, my grandma always said, well, God gave us enough sense to know not to do certain things.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, yeah, if you're somewhere where there's heroin needles lying around,
Maybe drive somewhere
obviously,
else before you do your little grounding
yeah,
ritual. Yeah.
we need to get out of there. Um, but yeah, and with the grounding and stuff like that, even if it's just 10 minutes a day,
Hmm.
like, so I do, on top of, I've built my brand. I have a couple training clients, things like that. I still do work a factory job.
Hmm.
Um, and just I get 2 breaks a day during that time. And during those times, I make sure to get outside. They're 20 minutes. I'm out there in the sun. I take my work shirt off. Obviously, I can't strip all the way down when I'm on my work property, but
Yeah.
just getting out there and getting the sunshine, on my face, and
Hmm.
just moving, going to take a walk, eating my food outside, little stuff like that. So, and I know that that's another thing too. So a lot of people look at the fitness influencers, whether it's just straight up fitness influencers or whether it's people in the natural space, or the holistic space, I should say. And they say, well, that's unrealistic, that's unreasonable. I have to go to work every day. I have to provide for my family. I have to do this. And it's like, great, yeah, I'm doing those things as well. But I'm also making the time to get out there and, even when it's summertime, getting outside and just doing that first thing in the
Hmm.
morning, going and taking a short walk, without my shoes. Obviously, there's no heroin needles
Yeah.
out in
Yeah.
my yard. There might be,
Oh, your chickens are clean. Good.
I might run into some chicken crap or something like that, but that's about the worst that I'm gonna
Yeah.
run into. So, um, yeah, make it happen. And if you're in that bad of a location, make the time and effort to get to a different location. I'm not talking about uprooting and moving, moving your family to somewhere else or anything like that. Just more so finding somewhere that you can drive to or take a bus to or have somebody, to give you a ride, somewhere with trees, somewhere with land, somewhere that you can walk around. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. And that is so important to just work with what you got instead of needing to obsess over like, oh, everything has to be perfect and I have to be able to spend 2 hours a day or it doesn't mean anything. Um,
exactly. Yeah, that's something that, people have a problem with too, because I'll get DMs from guys. It's so funny. So I made a post the other day and I said, everybody's worried about, how did I word it? Everybody's worried about semen retention. Uh, so there was a couple of the quote unquote biohacking
mhm.
type holistic things, but in reality, what it takes is hard work, consistency, and a little bit of controlled rage. So, that's not saying that any of that biohacking stuff is bad, but it's just like, I think that there's a lot of paralysis by analysis out there,
Mhm.
just from the DMs that I get from guys asking like, well, what's the best protocol to, they'll tell me their goals. I'm trying to get strong. I'm trying to get ripped. I'm trying to do this, that. What's the best semen retention protocol? Or, oh, what's how many minutes a day should I sun my nut sack? It's like, all right. I'm like, well, are you training intensely? Like, well,
Yep.
no. How many hours of sleep are you getting a night? 4.5. Like, what's your diet like?
Mm,
And it's just, this awful stuff. I'm like, fix that before you worry about the other
mm-hmm.
stuff. Like, obviously, um, with semen retention, obviously we're not going to want to be consuming porn and masturbating and things like that. But that in itself, the whole semen retention thing is like this small,
Mm-hmm.
super small in your journey to, if your goal is to put on muscle. Obviously on a spiritual level, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the bodybuilding stuff, it's like, worry about
Mm-hmm.
perfecting the few small basic things that you need before you worry about being perfect in
Yeah.
everything. So, and I
Yeah.
also saw an interesting post the other day. It was a podcast with Hormozy on it. I'm not sure who the guy he was talking to was, but he said that America, our modern industrial America, was built
Mm-hmm.
on guys,
Oh, I think I know this quote. Guys that smoked cigarettes, drove without
Yep.
seatbelts, and ate bacon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. 100%. And so, everything's not going to be perfect all the time, but, do your best to be perfect, but don't overanalyze and don't overjudge yourself anytime you fall short.
Mm-hmm.
And just stick to the basics, master the basics, and then let everything else fall into place. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that you knew that quote, because I was like, I knew the
Uh-huh.
cigarette part, but I forgot the rest of it. So,
Yep. Yeah, that's a really interesting point because, you look back at, again, the warrior cultures, they really liked alcohol. And some people today will say, oh, well, if you drink any alcohol ever, you're completely sabotaging your gains. You'll never make any progress. But they were living in such a competitive and aggressive society that they more than compensated for it. And so it's like, instead of majoring in the minors, I think it was Andy Frisilla. I also heard something the other day where he was talking about how if you're trying to find success in something, usually it's not a game of addition, it's a game of subtraction. So like if you're trying to make more sales, okay, you need to subtract the time that you're mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, you need to subtract the time that you're, spending on lunch, you need to subtract the time that you're doing your little, day-to-day kind of like logistics, housekeeping work. Because if you want to make more sales, the only way to make more sales is to, contact more leads or whatever the case may be. So the same thing would be like, if you want better results in the gym, you need to cut out first off the BS workouts that aren't doing anything for you, that are just like fluff. You need to cut out the 7-minute stretches where you're just standing in the squat rack scrolling Instagram and all these different things, so that you can actually get the work done that needs to happen.
The biggest thing that you need to cut out is whatever's keeping you up at night.
Mm-hmm.
So, because sleep is huge. Sleep is number one. I used to be, one of those, we'll call it the grind culture guys that, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm going to sleep for 4 hours a night. I'm going to kick ass in my business. I'm going to train, do these intense workouts, all that. And there are some people that, yes, that works for them. Great. But once I fixed my sleep, I tell you what, I'm operating on a whole other level. Like we're also, we're designed to move, but we're also designed to rest. That's why we have a Sabbath, and that's why we have to sleep at night. Even Jesus got tired and had to go rest. So it's like I know that I'm not better than Jesus. Obviously Jesus wasn't a bodybuilder either, but if Jesus needed to rest, I need to rest too. So yeah, that'd be my number one, is whatever's keeping you up at night, whether it's the scrolling, whether it's Netflix, whether whatever it is,
just straight up procrastination. I mean, I'm guilty of staying up late a lot, and oftentimes the issue for me is just I didn't get what I said I was going to get done finished during the day. And so it's like I still finish that thing, but instead of being in bed at 9 or 10 when I promised myself, I'm up till 12 or whatever it is.
Yep. Yeah, that's late.
Mhm.
That's the biggest thing. Even we'll call him the ultimate biohacker. Have you looked at any of Brian Johnson's stuff?
Oh, I
Not the
swear.
Liver King Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson is a guy, he's in his 40s and he is working on reducing his biological age as much as possible through science, through
Oh,
supplements.
I might have heard of this guy.
Yeah, he's kind of pale. He's kind of interesting looking. He's pale because, he says this certain amount of sunlight ages your skin and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, he's
Hmm.
got his stuff down to this ridiculous routine. But he said the biggest thing, the number one thing to fix, if for longevity and for staying young longer, is your sleep.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that you mentioned earlier was, you watch this action movies and the anime, things like that. That
hmm
really gave you the motivation. In this space, I feel like motivation gets a really bad rap because,
hmm
you need that consistency, you need that discipline to keep going. So what do you
yeah.
think is the appropriate balance of kind of getting hyped up and invigorated in the moment versus building that long-term habit when you don't feel like it and when it just seems like a grind?
Well, there's two. I guess I have two answers for you. I think that some people, maybe you're one of them. I know I'm one of them, definitely. I don't have to have the discipline to do this stuff because I love this stuff.
Hmm.
So as soon as I started hitting the weights, watching the Dragon Ball, loading up my backpack, running up the hill, doing my push-ups, hitting the dumbbells, instantly just that feeling, I was addicted to that feeling. Um, you know, I've I'm 34 years old, so within my life, I've had sex, I've smoked weed,
Hmm.
alcohol, and for whatever reason, aside from maybe the sex, the most addicting feeling that I've had is that feeling of, getting that pump and bettering myself in the gym with the
Hmm.
weights. So that's one thing. I think that some people are it's just a part of them that becomes unleashed when you start doing it, when you take that action. So
You
for
start.
me, there was never a point that I had to quote unquote get motivated to do it, aside from some leg days when it's cold outside. But for those who aren't motivated, it it is building that discipline. I mean, you don't have to have the David Goggins level discipline. David Goggins is insane.
Hmm.
Um, and I respect it. I respect his insanity. But um, another thing that I would say is if you're not motivated to train in that way, find a different way to train.
Mm.
So, me personally, I love the bodybuilding stuff. Someone else might absolutely hate that, but then they take a jujitsu class and fall in love with jujitsu, and it's like, holy
Hmm.
shit, this is what I'm meant to be doing. Or somebody else might, as much as I hate running. Somebody might go for a run and they're like, you know what? I hate all these weights. I can't stand it. I don't get anything out of lifting weights, but I love running. So I
Hmm.
think part of it is finding what works best for you, what you enjoy. Because just like, we're all called to different things within, business and life. Some of us are called to be teachers, some of us are called to be, workers, blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
Whichever. Some of us are called to be fathers, women, some are called to be mothers.
Hmm.
Um, I believe that there's different things that are more applicable to you on a personal level, you
Mm.
know.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I do agree that the weightlifting stuff isn't for everybody, but that doesn't mean that you can't be a badass in a different area, and it's another area that's going to keep
Hmm.
you into shape. So, I mean, you look at a boxer that's just doing body weight stuff and, their boxing stuff,
Hmm.
doing boxing drills. It's what they enjoy, it's what they love, you know. That dude's a badass. Like, there's no getting around it even if he doesn't touch a weight.
Hmm.
So, and he keeps himself in shape. So that's a big thing. I think finding what works for you and works in your lifestyle.
Hmm.
And definitely for me, I love the bodybuilding stuff. I love the powerlifting stuff, but anymore, the risk to reward ratio for me, it isn't worth it to go super heavy all the time just because I've had a couple shoulder surgeries. Each one of those takes 4.5 months to recover from. So that's 4.5 months of not doing the things that I love. So
Hmm.
anymore, I stick to bodybuilding. So, like, what about you? Like, what do you do to keep in shape? I know you said you go to the gym. I know
Hmm.
you started. So I'm assuming you're doing like a bodybuilding type protocol.
Yeah, sort of bodybuilding, more like an all-around functional strength thing. Right now, I'm focusing on bulking up because I'm like 165, 170. So I definitely want
Mm-hmm.
to, get some meat on my bones. Always been a very skinny or lean dude, depending on what season I'm
Yeah.
in. So that's the focus right now. And then later on this year, the hope is to get back into either jujitsu or kickboxing because
Okay.
I've done both of those in previous years and I've never competed in them, but I'd like to. And it's just like you said, it's one of those things where some things people enjoy, some things they don't. But at the end of the day, it is satisfying to just in a very primal and natural way. It's incredibly satisfying to put in effort physically and then to
Mm-hmm.
see yourself improving. Whether it's your technique gets better in jujitsu, you get knocked out less in boxing, your
Yeah.
bench goes up, you can reduce your run time, whatever that case may be. It's going to depend on the person, but like you said, it's just
Mm-hmm.
very satisfying to see those incremental gains. And it's also very important because if you're struggling with confidence or self-respect, things like that, I think one of the best things you can
Mm-hmm.
possibly do is to get in the gym, because then it's not a matter of, well, I think this, I believe that. It's just a very blunt and truthful reality. Can you move X weight? Can you not move
Mm-hmm.
X weight? And
Yeah.
then as you work at it, you can move more and you can move more. And then you start to believe, oh, hey, maybe I can get better and I can improve. And that's not even getting into all of the um, psychological and physiological benefits that it has to stress levels and things like that. So I think that's a,
Mm-hmm.
a very interesting point. One other thing that I mentioned I
Yeah.
wanted to touch on before we started the call here was what your strategy is for raising strong sons and how you're approaching that. Like, because my one of my younger brothers is an amazing runner, insanely good runner.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get him into lifting years ago, and he was like, "Oh, well, I don't
Yeah.
really want to start handling weights until I'm 14 because kids shouldn't handle weight, things like that."
Yeah.
And I think we have
Say
a
it'll
lot of
stunt their growth or whatever.
exactly, yeah. And so I'm just wondering what your take is on that, both from the mindset perspective and then the practical one of like, when should you start getting into weight training? What is that going to look like? How do you ramp up? Whether you're someone listening to this is a high schooler looking to take their
Mm-hmm.
fitness to the next level, or somebody that's 20, 30 years old and has never seriously worked out before. What would be those introductory steps if they wanted to get started on a similar path to you, so like bodybuilding or something like that?
Gotcha. Well, I'll answer your first question first. So yes, I am a father. I have two sons. Um, and how I approach, I guess, raising them in a way, that they'll grow up to be, men who are strong men,
Mm-hmm.
is essentially leading by example. So, um, and I might get some flack for this because they say don't be your kid's friend, be their parent, not their friend. I like to be both because I like to have that trust on that level that they can come to me with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than, oh, you're in big trouble for this, you're grounded, blah, 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 blah. Of course, you have to take stuff, you have to ground them. Like sometimes they do act out of line. But the biggest thing that I like to do is establish that trust so that if they are struggling with something, that they can talk to me about it. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
obviously blatant disrespect, things like that, disrespecting their teachers, things like that have to be addressed in a parental level. But
Mm-hmm.
things that they are struggling with, whether they're struggling with, I have young boys. I have already had a conversation with them, just a man-to-man conversation about porn.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't, say, look, if I catch you guys looking at this stuff, you're grounded. I'm taking away your phone, this and that. I explained to them, like, look, this is out there. This is something that your friends are going to be watching. It's something that people are going to think it's funny. People think it's hot, whatever else. People are going to be trying to show you this stuff. And out of curiosity, as a young man, you're going to be looking, tempted to look at this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, basically I broke it down in the scientific way of like, that messes up your dopamine receptors. And so it's if you start watching that stuff now, it's going to take more and more and more to give you that same response. And essentially, you know, trying to word it, and I'm trying to think of how I worded it. Nothing will be exciting. So you'll almost feel like a zombie inside from watching that stuff. And I said, I know you guys are young now, they'll be teenagers soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
That, you're not thinking about the future of having a relationship with a woman, having kids of your own, all that stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
said, but, if you become so desensitized by watching that stuff, then that's going to give you problems in your marriage in the future, problems with the woman. So it's like, so it's there. If it's something that you
Mm-hmm.
struggle with, talk to me about it. But this is the consequence for it. The consequence isn't that it's going to make dad mad, that you're going to get grounded for it. The consequence is the long-term consequence of
Mm-hmm.
what it actually does to you inside, on the mental level, on the spiritual level, and then in relationships in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. And I'm using that particular one as an example because I know that's something that a lot of guys of all ages struggle with.
Yeah.
It's something that I in the past have struggled with. I mean, I had access to the silly late night HBO pornography when I
Mm-hmm.
was, God, I don't know, probably 14 years old, So
Mm-hmm.
um and it's something that you can allow yourself to become addicted to. And so that's just something that I warn them against, and I warn other young men, like, okay, like, I
Mm-hmm.
understand this is there. You're probably going to fall into that temptation because it's so easy. It's so easy to do. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
free, it's accessible, and it'll literally rot your brain. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing. So situations, stuff like that. Um, I just like to keep an open forum with them with it. It's so that they're not nervous about bringing anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the other things, such as, the work ethic, the bodybuilding stuff, that just the fact that, I lead by example. I'm
Mm-hmm.
out there in the yard while they're, over here knocking out sets of pull-ups on my tree. Rest in peace to that limb. Out there
Mm.
hitting my weights, and sometimes, not all the time, like, hey dad, why don't you show me how to do those pull-ups? And my younger son especially,
Mm-hmm.
he'll want to get out there and do pull-ups and push-ups and this and that. My older son, he's not so much into the bodybuilding aspect of stuff, so it's not something I'm going to force on him per se, as long as he's out doing something active. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's one way that I do that, as well as, allowing them to see me put in work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of lame, like, oh yeah, dad's going to work again. But it's like, I like them to see that I work
Yeah.
and I provide. I'm able to provide for them, with taking them out to eat, or, the healthy meals, whatever else,
Mm-hmm.
cooking. We made asparagus last night. Asparagus and eggs was dinner last night.
Mm,
So, yep. So just living out that healthy lifestyle in front of them
hmm.
without pushing it on them. Because I know that some kids, their parents are into bodybuilding, things of that nature. And by the time they grow up, they're so fried out on it because their parents forced it onto them that they don't want
Yeah.
to do it anymore. So,
So
yep.
you're more just showing them the way you believe a man should conduct himself and just letting the option be there so that if they want to get involved with it, they're able to.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. Exactly.
Good stuff, man.
So,
So I know we're getting toward the end of our time here. So my last question for you,
mhm.
explain to me why anime is not a stain on Western civilization that should be brutally eradicated.
So check it out. Check it out, man. There's it's funny because I have a meme in my head that I've never created. You know that scene from Predator where they slap hands?
Yeah.
It's gonna be that, them slapping the hands, and on one side it's gonna have bodybuilders, and the other side it's gonna have basement dwellers, and in the middle it's gonna be Dragon Ball because the bodybuilders and the basement dwellers. So it's I really need to do that. Um
Oh, real.
it's one of those things, just like anything else, that this might sound silly to you, but you know, I believe that in the time where I wasn't, when I was young, I wasn't necessarily following God. I believe that God put that stuff there as a parable to kind of teach me and instill some of that drive in me to better myself, which ended up, leading to bigger things in my life. Um, so I look at it as a parable. There's other people that look at it, and it's interesting because I've gone to things like Comic-Con and those events, and the majority of people at those things, yes, I agree, are the far left, not your, not the trad sphere type
Mm-hmm.
people by any means, but there's also people that there's a lot of people out there. So the creator of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, he just passed away
Mm-hmm.
on March 1st. And the amount of guys who have been posting reels and YouTube videos and everything else about how that show in particular during their dark times motivated them to, rather than give up, to better themselves and to create a better life. Um, it's just like it's undeniable the impact that it has had within some of the masculine space,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny because they call, oh yeah, you're just a bunch of weebs, blah 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 blah. I'm probably the I'm the baddest anime dude on the internet, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I used it as fuel to better myself by looking at it as a parable. Now it's the same thing with like Star Wars fans. Star Wars all about
Mm-hmm.
the resistance, and but the people who watch it are totally against real resistance. It's an interesting dynamic. But
Mm-hmm.
like anything, it's all on how you take it. So some people see it and they're motivated, other people use it as a form of escapism. But I look at Western sports the same way. Like, there's literally grown men with another man's name on their back,
Mm-hmm.
another man's name and number. So it's like, other guys raising kids and their dad's not their hero. Some football player's their hero. And it's like, it's really shameful.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then there's also the people who watch the sports growing up and they're like, you know what, this is kick ass. I want to do this. And that instills the training and that mindset
Mm-hmm.
into them. So I believe there's good and bad in everything. And yeah, I would say the
Yeah.
majority of things out here may lead to the bad, may lead to the degenerate, weak society, whatever else. But at the same time, like, McDonald's is bad for you, but if you need some protein, you can go get 4 double cheeseburgers, and there's all your protein for the day right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's all on the perspective and finding the middle
Mm-hmm.
where, this isn't completely bad. It's not completely good. I'm going to take, what I want from it, not use it as escapism,
Mm-hmm.
but realize that it's something that in a time where I was young in darker spaces, not only helped pull me from this darkness, but inspired me to be a better
Mm-hmm.
man. So,
Yeah.
and of course, I mean, there's a lot of, mindless junk anime out there, just like there's mindless junk Western cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's
all on what you're choosing to ingest. And with your brain, you have the power to digest it
mm-hmm.
in the way that, so
Yeah.
I
One of
don't
the
know. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very interesting topic because one of the things that I want to highlight from what you said is basically the importance of having inspiring stories and role models and things that we can aspire to be. Because if we're just looking at ourselves, we might be
Hmm.
like, well, good enough. But, men just categorically, we have this drive to be dominant and be the best. And a lot of people will just ignore that. They'll convince themselves that it's somehow, selfish or prideful or whatever to pursue those ambitions. But we all have them.
Hmm.
And I think that, like you're saying, it's not so much a question of does that thing exist? It's how you're going to channel it. And like, I mean, the first piece of content that I ever put out on my account was me,
Hmm.
and it was really bad, because it's it's one of those things where you build up. But what I was
Oh
saying
yeah.
was that the world needs heroes. We need
Hmm.
people to look up to, and we live in a world that is, I mean, you can look at the absolute state of Star Wars and every other beloved franchise. We live in a
Yeah.
world that is not creative on its own and doesn't have much to show for itself. And so we try to take what we can from the past and we end up just distorting and destroying it. And so having that perspective where you're able to, create a role model and have something to live up to in a standard that's above where you are now that you're trying to get to, I think is so important. The
Hmm.
two big objections. Well, I have three big reasons for not liking anime. The first and the most important
Yeah.
one is for the meme. I've had some friends since college that love anime, and
Uh-huh.
I'm morally obliged to poke fun at them. You understand? Um,
Oh, definitely.
yeah. The second part is, the big objection being the time investment. Like I've had multiple of these people tell
Hmm.
me that I have to see. I think it's Full Metal Alchemist. Is that an anime?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They're like, oh, you have to see this. I'm like, yeah, it sounds great. I don't want to invest 300 hours of my life because like in anything, like whether it's a video game or a movie or something like that,
Hmm.
I know from past experience I'm a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. So even if a story isn't that good, the fact that I started it means I really want to know how it ends. And so like I
Yeah.
know my own limits and how much time I've wasted in the past on these things to be like, maybe once I'm a paraplegic, at 80 in the hospital, like that'll be my time to catch up
Yeah.
on
You're
anime. But
you're gonna catch up on
yeah, but while I
it.
still have, control of my motor functions, I don't want to devote that much focus to it. And then the third and final objection would be just that, anime a lot of times is just categorically regarded as degenerate because you have a lot of like the trashy shows and stuff like that. And the
Hmm.
anime the anime body pillows and all these different things. But like you said,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
problems are present um, in Western cartoons, in music, in any art form imaginable. There is, like the proper way to use that thing and the proper way to express emotion and explore the human experience and all these different things. And then there are the, jackasses and perverts out there that will just look to make a quick buck and ruin it for the rest of
Yeah.
us. So,
Yep. So, yep. And yeah, definitely. There's a lot of it out there. And what's interesting? So, like growing up watching Dragon Ball, watching that stuff, and then you having that get me into the gym and everything. And then I see the other side of it
mm-hmm,
where, it's some, guy living in his mom's basement, out of shape, watching anime porn on his computer or whatever.
mm-hmm,
And you just imagine, I'm sure you can picture it in your head. But
yeah,
I'm like, how can you watch the same thing, get started watching the same thing as me and not be motivated to
Mm-hmm.
better yourself? Like I don't get it. Like that's a
Yeah.
realization I
Well,
had, but then
it's the same problem with modern sports is some people view it as motivation to get better and as a challenge of something to live up to. But then other
hmm
people want to stay comfortable and they have that little voice that's gnawing away at them, telling them that they could be more, but they can't drive themselves to put in the effort to improve because they're just comfortable enough to not need to make that change. And so it's a lot
hmm
easier to live vicariously through the achievements of other people than it is to
Yeah.
actually make something of yourself. Like my younger brother, the one I was talking about earlier, loves football. I've never
hmm
really understood it, but like I said, he's also an extraordinary athlete. He puts in the work, he takes his training seriously, everything like that. And so it's like if you want to enjoy this in your downtime, there are people doing way dumber things with their downtime too. It's just
Yeah.
when go, like your team wins the Super Bowl and you're like, yeah, we did it. It's like, sir, you sat on a couch and
Yeah.
ate Cheetos. You didn't do
Yeah.
shit. Let's just be very clear.
Yep. hmm Like
Um,
those guys who train their asses off, they did it.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and
So,
that gets into a whole deeper conversation of like when can you take pride in, like, should you take pride in national heroes, for example, like, should you be proud of I don't know, the founding fathers achievements because you weren't actually there, you didn't do anything. And then you can get into a
hmm
whole argument with what's the proper extent. But I think the healthy balance to strike is it's good to take pride in the achievements of the people that came before you with the understanding that you have a responsibility to uphold that legacy and further it. Because no matter
hmm
where you are in the world, you are the beneficiary of thousands of years of human history. And no matter how garbage your life is, the fact that you even exist is a statistical improbability that so many people had to meet and have children that had the exact
Yeah.
right genes for you to exist. Like that alone, just the fact that you exist at all is a gift in itself. And it's one
hmm
that we can never repay. And so I think that the important perspective is the ability to pay it forward. The really interesting thing about stewardship in general is the idea that we are given things that we can never hope to repay, but the only way that we can be worthy of those things is by then preserving them for the people that come after us that will also never be able to repay that debt.
hmm
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a very, very
I like
interesting
that.
conversation.
I like that for sure.
Yeah, so Luke, I know you got to get going and I need to eat dinner actually. So thank
Yep.
you
I got
so
to put
much
these
for.
chickens away, man.
Yes, sir. Oh yeah, man. I had chickens when I was younger. I have so many terrible stories with them. But anyway,
Nice.
yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been an awesome conversation. It's great to, finally talk face to face
Yeah.
and connect with you. And yeah, I'll be getting this episode up probably in a couple months from recording because I have quite the backlog to work my way through. But I'll absolutely let you know when it goes up. And yeah, super excited to share it, man.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. No, good conversation. So,
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again, brother.
yep.
Take care.
I enjoyed it. All right, man. Talk soon.
And that concludes episode 13 of the Operation Paragon podcast. You can find Luke at Luke Sweet Machine on Instagram for motivational fitness content. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can DM Operation Paragon on Instagram or email operationparagonpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, remember that greatness is within your reach.